Kickstarter can be a really cool place to get funding for a game that publishers might not gamble on. Great games have come out of the system, such as Shovel Knight. Darkest Dungeon is yet another game to come from it. While I do like how its mechanics feel like an old school RPG, I think it'll only be enjoyable to its target audience, which is those who love games that have a lot of trial and error to figure out. The development is so recent that there's literally no history to it. It was developed and published by Red Hook Studios and released in February of 2015. No backstory, nothing to sort through to try and figure out if there's anything about them I should note. The story of Darkest Dungeon is really nothing special. The story plays out like any other game where the gates of hell are unleashed in your backyard and you got to recruit people to help you in your quest to stop all the monsters who have spawned from there. The graphics are good enough for a Kickstarter game. The game looks and feels like an interactive comic book. Every level feels layered despite it being in 2D. Levels are also varied and can be huge. Depending on how long the level says it is, there can be a lot of rooms to explore and things to see. The art itself is also well done. It looks like a combination of how gritty the Spawn comics are, but it uses similar design elements to a game like Dungeons and Dragons. My only problem is that these dungeons can get repetitive. There's only 4 or 5 dungeons, and they tend to use the same kind of design elements over and over again. It's not a big time game changer, but it's something to note of for the next game Red Hook Studios makes. The audio is theme appropriate. It has a very doom and gloom sound to it, which works really well with the theme of the game. This only adds to the do or die situation that the world is set in. The gameplay is not for everyone. If you like RPGs with tons of micromanagement, then you will love Darkest Dungeon. The gameplay is a lot like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance with a lot of dungeon crawling elements to the levels. The game starts you off with 2 characters. Each character has their own class, such as grave robbers, clerics, crusaders, and so forth. They also have their own personality traits, which can be both good or bad. Each trait will give them different bonuses, such as increased accuracy, resistance to different status effects, and so on. Each character also starts off with 4 attacks you can use, with each having a specific range, different effects, and place where you need to stand to use it. You can unlock other attacks later on, and can switch them out anytime you are in town. After the first level, you can recruit more characters, or upgrade the town with the loot you have before you can start entering dungeons. Before you jump into each dungeon, you can select what characters you want to use and what items you want to buy that you may need for your journey. These include food to heal your characters by a small amount, but in longer levels can be crucial as it's needed to add points to reduce the stress levels of your characters. Also, in longer dungeons, you get an item to set up camp. This is where food comes in real helpful. Depending on how much food you have, you can choose how much you want to eat to reduce stress and increase how much health you recover. The more you eat, the more you reduce. Keep in mind that if you run out of food and your characters are hungry, they will take a significant health loss and significant amount of stress damage. Some other items include torches, keys to open chests, different healing items to remove status effects or to remove them from dead bodies, and shovels to break away barricades and other obstacles. Keep in mind that you have a limited inventory, and as soon as you pass a certain number of item, it takes up another spot. As soon as you're done making your preparations, you enter the dungeon to complete the objective and earn your reward. If you survive, then you get whatever items you have collected along with the quest reward. The only drawback is that any item you don't use, like food or torches, they don't carry over. Yet you still keep all the loot you have if you quit in the middle of a dungeon. With every dungeon you enter, you risk the possibility of giving your characters negative traits, positive traits, and with the more recent update, you have to deal with diseases. The diseases are a big-time game changer. I'll get into what causes them when we get into combat. To sum up diseases, they suck. These are a big-time stat drop that can destroy a character, which at the end of the day can destroy a team. You also have to manage a stress meter. During the quest, certain events will cause your character's stress meter to fill. If the stress meter fills the first time, then a positive or negative event will occur. This can cause them to do erratic things that will negatively affect the party, or give them a boost, and they will do stuff that positively affects the party. Also, if you leave a dungeon in the middle of a quest, then your stress meter increases as well, and it doesn't really reset when you complete a quest. You have to send the character off to do different kinds of stress-relieving acts, such as praying, gambling, and so forth. Now, if that meter fills up a second time after they get the first negative effect, then that character will die due to what I believe is a heart attack due to stress. The whole gameplay element adds a nice touch of realism in that not everyone reacts positively to a stressful situation, and every once in a while you got to relieve that stress from time to time. The combat is pretty much like any other turn-based strategy game. Like I said before, you have a party of 4 characters and each one has their own moves. You basically play shot for shot till one group dies. The biggest difference is how the statuses work and how much more planning goes into attacking. There are several different kinds of statuses you can inflict. These include blight or poison, bleed, marked, which enemies will attack that character more often, and your standard stat drops. These are temporary, can be stacked to do more damage, or be removed with healing items. Just keep in mind that if these aren't dealt with soon enough, you will learn that there's a chance they will be inflicted with a disease. So here's where I think this is a somewhat niche game to gamers. This is a brutally hard game for people who like lots of micromanagement. This can be a double-edged sword. On the other hand, if you like this kind of game, then this is a balancing act that is rewarding you for smart tactical planning. If you don't like this kind of game, then this is going to be your own personal hell. Having to match 2 different health meters along with what to upgrade, bring along, and when to use items can be a chore. This can deter gamers who aren't willing to put in the hours to learn how to be effective playing it. Where I stand is in the middle. I see both sides of the coin of the game. I love real-time strategy games like Supreme Commander, StarCraft, and so forth that have lots of micromanagement. The problem is that I don't think I'll ever have the speed needed to get good at them, and I feel so pulled out of the action that I get bored playing them. Darkest Dungeon has those micromanagement elements, but it feels a lot more involved in the fights. On the other hand, it's so unforgiving that I don't ever get that far before I lose my good characters and I feel like I should start over. So at the end of the day, I respect what Darkest Dungeon does, I just don't enjoy it as much as I would really like to. Overall, Darkest Dungeon is a love it or hate it kind of game. This is a game that knows its target audience and doesn't care for anyone else. If you're into games like Civilization, where there is a lot of depth to tactics that have the difficulty level that shows no mercy to people who don't manage everything effectively, and a cool mechanic involving someone's state of mind, then this game is right up your alley. Otherwise, this game is going to give you fits with no apologies at all, and might be a game that's better to watch than to play. Overall, I give it a 7.5 out of 10.